Hello. Welcome back to the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing podcast on politics, media, entertainment, bullshit headlines, all sorts of things. I'm Alex.
I'm Aiden.
And I'm Jason.
And this
And
week,
today,
all right.
today is my episode to host. So
Smash cut.
I have been digging deep in the weeds and the burrows, searching high and low, far and wide, for the best, juiciest articles around.
Ugh.
And I've found a bunch. I have found my pot of gold.
Big, hanging, juicy.
You're mixing a lot of metaphors.
Yeah,
right
they're ripe. They're ripe for the picking.
These juicy leprechaun beavers have a lot to offer us.
I'm plum.
And today we're, of course, going to cross the entire political range and spectrum of psycho orc Republicans to knee-biting, nibbling Democrats who are just always picking at each other, to the occasional article that's like, you know what? They're right. That's good. I'm happy. I feel refreshed. That 1 in every 100 articles I find on news says something that makes sense. Speaking of, you know what? Let's start out on a good note. We are going to go to Salon. After 20 years, repeal the Patriot Act.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yep.
They had the balls. They're saying it.
You know, everyone was saying it like a couple years after it was passed, but it didn't really change anything, unfortunately.
I remember being 8 years old or 7 years old and saying, I don't like this thing.
Yeah.
I don't want this thing to become law. And I'm a child.
Yeah, it's always a good sign when you pass something in haste immediately following a national tragedy with a propagandistic headline that undermines the fundamental principles of the republic. That's usually a good sign for what it's going to do. So what, I mean, did you read this one or is this just the headline?
No, it's just the headline.
Yeah, because it's like, the only problem I have with it is that it's implying that we needed the 20 years to figure that out. Right? We've had 20 years, it didn't work out.
I do get the sense that Salon was not saying, well, after 19 it was fine. Like, I bet the article is a listing of, like, all throughout how the last 20 years it has
I'm sure.
failed us.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're not like some, psycho hawk who's like, well, I guess I finally come around on Iraq.
You know the one that was like, after 20 years, we now know why Biden is leaving Afghanistan. It's like, you should have left immediately. Like, there shouldn't have been there in the first place. Like, it has almost that tone of, like, let's say the radical thing by couching it in, like, we've done our homework.
Yes, it has the lib, I'm a mom explaining to
you
tone, but I agree with the sentiment, and I'm glad someone's saying it.
Oh, they're saying it.
Normalize repealing the Patriot Act.
Normalize not being a fascist.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand it. I guess at like the 20-year mark might be when I'd start to be uncomfortable with the indefinite detainment without trial of people. That's like, it's not always an easy thing to latch onto as objectively wrong, so I can understand that. And it's not like you're aware of the people spying on you at all times or anything like that. So really, it is a journey, and I'm going to read this article afterwards so I can join the Salon writer on their personal journey. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Well, I wish we had more positive things to say for what is almost certainly an unambiguously good argument, at least at this point, but there's not a lot to go off with this little on the headline.
I apologize. We were all depressed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of someone who maybe almost got the message right, from The Atlantic, the House of Representatives is failing American democracy. Discuss. Alex, I think Alex has already picked up on the irony I found.
The only actually democratic part of the country is the part failing democracy?
The only actually democratic representative body we have.
No, instead we should rely on the Senate, which has a third of the country controlling half of the seats, or the unelected Supreme Court, or the fucking geriatric murder fest of the executive branch. Like, what the fuck is the good democratic part they want us to like?
Yeah, if I had to cut our bicameral system in two, I don't know if this is the conclusion I would have landed on.
Yeah.
Now, once again, I haven't read the article, because I'm a good Samaritan. But my guess is that they're going to say something like, well, look at the House of Representatives. That's where all the crazies are. That's where, like, the Boebert and the Marjorie Taylor Greens are. And that's where all, like, the, podunk crazy assholes show up in. But the reality is, that's democracy. That's what makes up America. That's what makes it representative. What's not representative is a body where someone can represent 200,000 people or 10 million people, and their single vote can be bought and sold and change the entire outcome of literally any piece of legislation. As we will discuss further with discussions about Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who will come up later in the episode. It's just very funny to me that the Atlantic is like, aiming their rifle, but they're aiming it at, like, the kid.
Yeah, well, there's a very long held position, which is a fundamentally reactionary position, but it's very core to, like, American government classes and civic education, which is that you want to moderate the extremes of society and public opinion by having this sort of the jurisprudence of a seasoned set of veteran politicians who all have an elite status and are sort of they all know the game and they don't get
also known as corrupt oligarchs,
right? And so what they basically say is like, oh,
who are more self-interested than anyone.
The Senate is somehow the good body because the Senate has more, like, political experience. They're older on average. They have more time as a politician on average. It's like, well, okay, fine. You technically do get a wider range of political opinions in a body like the House of Representatives because it's more representative.
And they're elected more frequently. They are more at the whims of the political zeitgeist.
But if anyone
makes them representative.
If anyone thinks that the sort of psychotically evil agenda of the Senate Republicans is any less than that of the House Republicans, I don't like they're lockstep. Like, I don't know what the fuck they would be talking about at that point. The party is whipped. The party is very much in lockstep with one another because they actually have party discipline. So there's no meaningful difference between the Senate and the House Republicans because they're all basically whipped to the same end goal. The fact that they use, like, a mad dog like Boebert or whoever to push their, like, radical fringe into the fold, who cares? They're just doing it so they can continue to, like, cut taxes and give money to corporations. Like, that doesn't actually change anything. It's just which form of clown they're presenting to rally their base or to mobilize energy. So it's all just sort of propaganda. That no one actually gives a shit about whether someone's bringing AR-15s into the Congress. Apparently, it was just a way of sort of, like, getting a few more chuds to the polls. So it's not even a meaningful distinction.
To be fair, I don't think anyone's brought rifles into Congress yet, just pistols.
Whatever.
But so, Aiden, why do you think the House of Representatives is failing democracy?
I mean, I think I can guess at the subject of the article. It's probably about how divisive negotiations over the reconciliation and infrastructure bills have been in general, and how that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be government is supposed to be a resounding symbol of cohesion and stability, and this is undermining the foundation of the institution of Congress. How do I personally think it's failing?
Would it surprise you if I told you that this article is not even that, like, complicated? It's written by a former member of the House. So it's really just a petty, they're bad now.
Oh, great. Well, this never would have happened if I were there. So you have read this one then?
No, that was just, I just read, this article's written by a salty, jealous guy who formerly was in the House and lost.
Uh-huh. Well, let's put it this way. The top to bottom American democracy sucks. Like, let's not kid ourselves. It's not good. It's just the best of bad things. So it's not like you can't find problems with the House, but the problem is not that it's not democratic. It's the only democratic body we have. The problem is that it's filled with assholes. And it's filled with assholes because of a two-party system and a first-past-the-post setup that creates a two-party system wherein we end up with corrupt Democrats and even more corrupt and evil Republicans. And neither of these groups has the interest of the American people at heart in any way, shape, or form. They're just kind of like, how much can we shuffle around our politics and identities and propaganda until one of us can outcompete the other one for corporate money? Like, it doesn't have a fucking thing to do with, like, good for American democracy. In fact, this article doesn't even it starts from a premise that is absurd, which is that you can even define what it means to be good for American democracy as if it was like a math equation. They're like, all right, we've made 4
Right,
American
we're not filling up the
democracies.
meter.
Like, what the fuck
But-
does that mean? You have to make a coherent case. I don't know.
What I find so funny is that this is written by someone who was in the House. Even the most psycho Beltway journalists would admit the House actually gets a lot done. A lot of bills get through the House. A lot of legislation is written and passed through the House.
Yeah.
The House is actually, in this era of gridlock and total democratic dysfunction, is actually not just representative, but functional.
Yeah.
They actually get shit passed. Republicans actually try and pass things they want to do, and Democrats actually pass things they want to do. They're actually more bipartisan.
Well, you know what they say: the House always wins.
But because they all know that they're. I see you there. Because they all know that no matter what gobbledygook they pass, it could just go die in the Senate.
Yeah.
It's their get out of jail free card. And that's what they run on every 2 years. Well, look, I wrote my name and attached it to this really cool progressive thing, which would have been great for America. And then it died because Joe Manchin took shit on it.
The House of Representatives has always been the junior member of the bicameral legislature by design because of the elitist anti-democratic sentiment ingrained in the constitutional makeup of the country. So to say like they're failing democracy, it's like, no, democracy failed it. Like it was intentionally placed in an inferior position so it can't accomplish what it's trying to accomplish. How is that its problem? Like, I don't understand.
They have the causality totally backwards. American democracy failed to set up actual democracy 200 years ago with the creation of the Senate.
Like if you compare
and the creation of the Supreme Court and the creation of the executive.
If you compare the United States to almost any parliamentary system, and you wanted to use American democratic institutions to compare to like what they have, every other country in a parliamentary system pretty much just has a House of Representatives, and then they attach a much weaker version of the president to the House of Representatives as the leader of the House of Representatives.
Right, a rep would run the government every 4 years.
So basically, you know, someone between Biden and like Pelosi would be, or you know, whoever would be the head of government, but only so long as his party wanted him to be the head of government or to be the head of government as part of a ruling coalition in the House of Representatives. And as soon as that coalition fell apart, someone else would take over or some other party would take over. It would have nothing to do with like this bicameral thing where you have to go through the Senate, which has nothing to do with democracy, or you have to go through the Supreme Court, which has even less to do with democracy, or a president, which has more power than the bodies themselves, even though he's supposed to just be like one guy who's the head of state. So like almost every other country doesn't even have this like 3-part system. They just have one system, which is they have a parliament. They have the equivalent of a House of Representatives. And it's much, much more functional than ours, even though it has its own set of problems. Because it's basically just what democracy is, as opposed to democracy plus some other bullshit that has most of the actual power.
And this is not to say that all parliaments in practice work very well. We do not need to look very far to look at the UK and look at the path from Cameron to Theresa May to Boris Johnson. You're like, look, sometimes parliamentary systems fuck up too. Yeah, of course. But America gets so in their own feelings about just how unique our system is and how uniquely fucked up our system is. And we just like roll it. We just love it. We just love how uniquely stupid we are. We bask in it.
Well, because we're the first fucking draft. Because one of the earliest modern democracies, and so we fucked it up, of course. In fact, we fucked it up so bad we did a second draft and it was still bad. And everyone else following us was like, all right, let's learn from their mistakes and improve. And we're like, we don't improve. It's our right to suck. So we could easily at any point have adapted a more parliamentary system to what we have. We just didn't. While the rest of the world built off of what we did and improved upon it. So, you know, yeah, you can have parliamentary systems that fuck up. And in those cases, you can say, hey, look, democracy is failing to achieve a good outcome. But what you can't say is look at the system where democracy is the weakest third of it.
Is barred from
access. Can't actually change things materially. Look, democracy's failed. It's like, no, what democracy? What democracy? The Senate is more powerful than the House and is less democratic. The Supreme Court can overrule either of them and is totally undemocratic. The president is sort of democratic, but is basically just abusing their power constantly, exceeding their bounds. So, like, what is this democratic like thing that they're even saying? Like, okay, here's the democracy and here's how it's failing. Give it a chance before you say it failed. You know, give us actual democracy, then see if it fails. Right now, what we have is barely democratic. I don't know.
All right. Well, speaking of barely democratic institutions, these two related articles, one from the Daily Beast and the other from CNN, From the Daily Beast. Capitol rioter decides to represent himself in court, accidentally admits to 2 new felonies.
Oh, cool.
Call that street justice. And then from CNN, federal judge holds DC jail in contempt and says it violated U.S. Capitol rioters' civil rights.
I mean, the Daily Beast article is just a good lesson that whoever you are, you should never represent yourself. Movies are not real. You should try to get a good lawyer, or a lawyer at all.
You're not Vin Diesel. It's not going to work out.
I don't think anyone's seen that movie, but it's so good.
A family can save you.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, sorry. I was just going to say that the CNN article is a bit. I'm a bit more on the fence about. What
you don't like it when a psycho judge says like "fucking"? You're not in order. You're in contempt.
Of course, my personal bias is that U.S. Capitol rioters should be and they should obviously still have their civil rights, but it's much more fun when bad things happen to them. I'm curious because I haven't really read or heard much about them being treated poorly. Certainly not treated poorly by police. Except for that woman, I suppose, who was shot trying to bust through the barricades.
That could be the name. Shot while trying to bust.
Absent context, maybe. I'm kind of curious what exactly who this federal judge is, and like how they got involved in like considering this case in the first place, like if they were, what kind of recourse brought it across their desk, but also what they are charging this DC jail with. I mean, not that surprising in that jails constantly violate people's rights, but also usually it gets to the cracks. So this must have been something high profile.
I wasn't aware that you could charge an institution, or failing that, maybe just a building, with contempt. Like they didn't name anyone. They didn't say like the head of the jail or some sort of committee. Like,
well,
they're
no,
holding
I mean,
the jail.
The article goes into who they're saying is in contempt.
I'm sure
you never walked by a jail.
Taking it too literally, Alex. Once again, we're not shooting walruses into space. We're not throwing jails in jail.
Just saying, title alone, it didn't say anything about the jail. It's just the jail.
Look, they gotta get it in as few words as possible. They're charging the Department of Justice and the warden of this jail because they feel.
I also hold the concept of jail in contempt. I have great contempt for jail as an idea.
I contempt you, jail.
I mean, it's a ridiculous premise to be like, this person is committing the cardinal crime against any state, which is to say treason/insurrection. We need to be delicate with them like they're soft, pottery to move them around. It's like, there's nothing more heinous you can do as far as the state is concerned. This is the same group of people who are like, I want to go hiking and give water birth. Can I do that after my treason? I just thought can I get my vegan shade-grown meals in jail after treason? It's like, there's a lot of states today, let alone throughout history, where almost all of them would have just shot them on sight for treason. Like, treason is often punished by like vicious martial law crackdown.
Or that we send the FBI to secretly kill them.
The idea that they're like, I'm uncomfortable. I wish I could have been treated better in jail after I tried to overthrow the state in a right-wing coup. Like, look, jail sucks. People shouldn't be in jail. As an institution, it's garbage. But what more heinous thing can you do than this? I mean, if anyone's mistreated, these are the people to be mistreated. Logically, if from the perspective of the state, let alone the perspective of someone who's, hates them even more than the state. So I don't know.
I think right-wing America has been watching too many prank videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can't just say it's a prank and get away with felonies, as these 2 articles demonstrate. All right, well, speaking of judges off their rocker, this one comes from the Washington Examiner.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh, come on.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg was right about Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Apparently, since Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died, there's been all these like unsealed documents of horrible shit she said. You know, it came out with like a puff of smoke. All these people have like, I've tried to defend Ruth Bader Ginsburg's honor while she was alive. So apparently, she said some shit like Colin Kaepernick sucks.
Yeah, she was vicious against him for absolutely no reason.
Right, but the point is now the right-wing psychos are like, wait a minute, that bitch we hate and wanted to die was right all along, but about the wrong thing.
It turns out she was reactionary the whole time and was not a good person to idolize.
That was not fucking run RBG or whatever the fuck. Not some big Democrat hero.
Yeah, she's about as progressive as fucking Joe Biden, and everyone's like sucking her ass because, she's not, the most reactionary human possible compared to the other ghouls on the Supreme Court.
Being pro-choice, not a high bar. Not a high bar to having good ethics.
This is why like intersectionality is so important to consider. Well, both important in general, but also consider when looking at a person. It's just like, I don't know, the idolization of RBG as like a girl boss was and is, I guess, so it's so narrow-minded. I mean, it's just kind of like a step beyond what we kind of laugh at all the time about, like, female IDF member, isn't that progressive?
Yeah.
I mean, the difference is that there is, like, she did have a role in supporting and advancing women's rights, but that doesn't at all mean, unfortunately, that you have to look at how she treated everything else, including things like that don't directly affect her, that don't directly relate to her life experience, which is often where things matter the most, is whether you can step outside of that, especially when you have the amount of power you have as a Supreme Court justice. When it's not even, it wasn't even like, I know more has been uncovered, including like more scrutiny of like her hiring record and the fact that she basically never hired minorities or people of color at least. But it was like public, and she basically said right after she was asked about it, and she's like, it's dumb and disrespectful.
Yeah, exactly.
It's basically like burning a flag.
Which, once again, legal and defended by the Supreme Court.
And which she should know more than almost anyone. I mean, even if you want to do the asinine personal project of, like, let me base my identity on one of the most elite and unelected people in the world, basically this Supreme Court coven, even if you want to base your identity on that, you could have chosen Kagan or Sotomayor, who are both better female Supreme Court justices than Ginsburg.
But they're not OGs, Alex. They haven't been in there for a decade.
Who gives a shit? Just pretend it's 20 years from now. Like, they're gonna last that long.
What, you don't like old crones?
I'm saying, like, there were two better female Supreme Court justices on the exact same premise than RBG, and they're still way too conservative, but they're way better than she was.
Don't worry. They'll be revered in 20 years.
I'm just saying, like, the whole obsession with her was just like, she's ancient and white and a woman and the Supreme Court. Great. Okay. I mean, if you read the shit she said, it could have been out of any moderate Republican's mouth. Like, who the fuck cares?
The beautiful thing about this article is that it's from the Washington Examiner. And so when you actually go to the Washington Examiner to read this article, you get hit with all sorts of extra levels of irony and stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I'm trying to read the article, and then they just blast me with this giant... Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson video talking about the goddamn Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito case. It's like the lobster fucking murders. It's like they're so on the conservative psycho train. They're just like, please take more of this. They're like drug dealers. But so this the person I was referencing was Katie Couric, who was like trying to downplay all the shit that RGB said to her.
Mm-hmm.
So just for the audience's reference, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was quoted as saying that Kaepernick's protest was dumb and disrespectful, even though he went to serving people in the military and asked what would be respectful, and they said kneeling. And that athletes are free to protest if they want to be arrogant.
Yeah, and he said this openly.
Oh my god, the irony is so rich.
This isn't like unsealed documents. We've known she said this for years. Like,
yeah, but the media downplayed it because, like, let's move on.
The reality is, she dumped on the entire what would essentially become an integral part of a Black Lives Matter or a resistance to police brutality or resistance to the state from really as far back as you want to go. And because it just didn't matter to her, right? Like the only thing that matters to her is like maintaining the decorum and the prestige of the American state. And so anyone who's like not respecting the flag or the salute or anything is committing a more heinous grievance than, say, mass murdering black people. And it really tells you everything you need to know about what she gives a shit about and why the court sucks. Because these are the kind of people who were rooting for on the court. These are the good people, and that's where their priorities are.
Remember last time when we talked about the two kind of fundamental different visions of America? One is we should always be constantly fighting for what we feel we deserve more of, and the other, which is you should feel grateful. Throw Ruth Bader Ginsburg into the you should feel grateful part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's a larger quote from her that I find particularly interesting. She said that these protests showed a contempt for a government that has made it possible for their parents and grandparents to live a decent life. Not like the actual athletic prowess is what allows the market to reward those skills, which they probably could not have lived in the place they came from. As they become older, they realize that this was youthful folly, and that's why education is important. So this old bitch is saying to professional athletes who have trained for 15 plus years of their young life to hone an insanely high-valued but dangerous skill. Shut the fuck up. Be grateful. When you get old, you'll understand. Get more educated, bitch. And I bet your parents had worse lives in Haiti or wherever the fuck you're from before. You should thank America for why you're good at football and we pay you.
Yeah, so those are the worst comments that Katie Couric was fielding.
You know what? I'm saying it. I'm glad Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dead.
You know what? How about this? She's talking about wherever they came from as if she's a true American.
And they're not.
They're not. Well, her father was a Jewish immigrant from Odessa, Ukraine, who came here roughly 100 years ago. And her mother's from Jewish parents from Poland. So she's only from people who have been American for one generation. She was the first of her, their parents weren't born there, she was. I guarantee you that most black people in this country are like third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation because of when they were dragged over here against their will.
Right, they all have slave relatives.
They are all like 100 times more American than she is. Because they can't even trace back far enough to know anything other than being American. So she's going to shit on them over how they should go back to where they came from. They came from America.
Alex, you know what I think you just did? Alex, you just destroyed them with facts and logic.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Well,
the difference is that in her mind is that she's more grateful of that.
Yeah, you know how the average black person can just arrive in the country and then their children can become on the Supreme Court in one generation.
Uh-huh.
That's a normal thing for black people to achieve in this country.
Yeah, and this is no reflection on her in particular, but since she made the argument, let's just look at the stability of Ukraine versus various countries in Africa. I don't know if that's always going to be a favorable comparison, unfortunately. I
mean, even Ukraine and Poland, which are by no means the most stable countries in Europe, have a lot more to offer you in terms of material resources and connections than an unknown series of locations in Africa that you don't even know anymore because your history was ripped away from you violently.
Yeah.
So yeah, as someone who is a descendant of Jewish immigrants from Europe myself, I have nothing. There's nothing against that, but to pretend as though that makes you like a true American. And people who have been victimized for so many generations, they don't even know their original identity. They have nothing left but the identity of the colonizer, like atrocious country that exploited them and their ancestors. To say to them, like, they should appreciate us. You should appreciate that. It's like you should appreciate the people who were like harvesting your ancestors for their labor and rending them into pulp. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's just disgusting. Like that's one of those repugnant things I've heard. I mean, that could have come out of like Ann Coulter, and I wouldn't have been surprised. I don't know. That one really pisses me off.
All right, now for our weekly segment on murder. These from ABC and BBC News. The first one I like because there's like a pun put in it. Yeah. Killed on Zoom. Dad held after toddler finds gun, shoots mom. And from BBC News, Several killed in Norway bow and arrow attack.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
Yeah, that was
wild.
I also saw the BBC, the Norway one. Horrible.
I
Really horrible
See, I
stuff.
thought Jeffrey Toobin was the worst thing we got on Zoom.
I looked through 10 different articles about the bow and arrow attack for a version that was funny, and I couldn't find one. They were all just horrible.
I just went with those straightforward ones.
It's one of the many ones I dropped as well. I'm like, this is too depressing.
And it fell right into my bucket.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. I'll take that trash and turn it to trash.
Still seeking Ranger's pet used in the D&D attack on Norway. I don't know. There's really there's no way to spin like 5 innocent people being murdered by a psycho to be too funny. I will say the Zoom thing is kind of funny. Like, you think the dad gave the gun to the toddler and said, go? Like, you think this was a setup? You think he's like, show mom?
Well, yeah, there's always a conspiracy theory that he was sick and tired of mom. He didn't want to have to pay alimony in 18 years when he knew. So he had to go toddler goat killer. It's like that Simpsons episode.
And he had it on Zoom so that anyone could confirm it was the kid.
He was like, see, I was there. I was on Zoom. It couldn't have been me.
Yeah.
On Zoom crank.
Oh, no. What was that noise? You know, like, what could have happened?
The reason I think this article in particular is interesting is because I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more of this. Because over the last 2 years, as most people's life and work life has had to revolve around being essentially on camera all the time, and the amount of guns in Americans' homes, you would have thought you'd hear about more gun accidents going off during Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
So I'm just surprised to find this one.
Unfortunately, most of them are like students have sex on Zoom meeting during class without realizing it or some shit. You know, like it's usually some dumb shit.
This sounds like the sequel to that, like, Unfriended. Killed on Zoom. Like, this is the next horror movie about going to work on Zoom and fucking scary demon ghost is killing you, everyone. You know that the video, like, the guy's hands in a blender? Like, some funny schlock horror to be made here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you own a gun, lock it up. If a toddler can get it, you definitely should not have a gun. That's all I really have to say. But
if you own a gun for self-defense and you don't live in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country, sell the gun. Because the chances are statistically higher you kill yourself or someone kills you in your own family. And you know this. You know it. Just look it up. You should only have a gun if you're hunting or if you're living in, like, the 10 most dangerous parts of the country. If that's the reason you're on it.
If you own a bow and you're not like a
keep your toddler away from that bow.
Stop it and get some help if you own a bow and you're not using it to, like, hunt venison.
I will say it's the one nice thing about the bow is that the toddler's not going to kill his mom with it.
What if it's like those like compound drill with like the pulley system, so it's very easy to.
Nah, there's no toddler on Earth strong enough to make that work. I might injure her. But.
You're right though. That that is a marketing part for guns. So easy a toddler could blow away their mom.
So easy your 2-year-old will kill you with it.
It's a selling point.
Is it?
For them, I think it is.
It's like a dystopian future. It's like you may not have the courage to kill yourself, but your 2-year-old will accidentally do it for you.
Time to retire your mom.
Jesus Christ. This one's getting dark. All right, what else we got,
No thoughts on the bow attack?
I know. I just read headlines and little blurbs as it developed. It sounds like he was a troubled person that the police was already aware of and killed a bunch of innocent people. So that's fucked up, and it probably means that even in the best countries, or better countries in the world, still there are conditions that push people to the edge of misery and insanity.
Yeah, I like articles like this because it's so easy to see how they get twisted into right-wing narratives. So every right wing will say, see, gun laws didn't save these 5 people, but they totally missed the point. Gun regulation is not designed to eliminate all violence. Otherwise, we'd make cars illegal. We'd make knives illegal. We'd make acid illegal.
We'd make police illegal.
Although, right, they were just designed to minimize the most collateral damage possible. And as we've seen in the last few years, people can just get in a truck and drive down a sidewalk. People can get acid from home cleaning products and kill as many people as they want. It's not we can't get rid of the instinct for violence in humans.
See, I thought you were going to say
we cannot give everyone things that toddlers can use to murder people.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say like, oh, Norway has a socialized economy and they still have murder.
Skill. Now, I'm sure Ian is right. The person's obviously deranged. It takes time and effort to draw a bow and shoot people. That's a difficult thing. I imagine the person who did this was not able to do it for long.
You have to be a real dead-eyed psycho to draw down someone with a bow 5 times consecutively and kill them. Like that takes a lot of precision and aim and intentionality.
If he had an AR-15, this number would have been 5 times higher. That's the point. Oh, and speaking of, was in the news, the fucking kid who did the Parkland shooting just pled guilty, I think.
Good for him.
All right, let's move forward. Where do I want to go next?
I'm terrified, honestly, after that last couple articles.
You know what? We're going to lighten the mood a little. This from one of my favorite news sources. Bro Bible. I'm not kidding. Genuinely a better website. Like, they will make you feel better about your day than if you read CNN. All right, this from Bro Bible, and this was at the peak of
is the thing as Lad Bible?
It's similar. The point is they talk about like bro stuff and sports and hot women.
Bro, have you heard the good word?
Groundbreaking. New malaria vaccine yet to be approved by Kyrie Irving and Cole Beasley. Now, I don't know how much, Aiden, you follow sports. I know Alex does not follow sports.
I don't know what the fuck this means.
So if anyone would like a little bit of helper here on who these people are, I will explain, gladly.
Are these real people?
Yes, so Kyrie Irving
have you never heard Kyrie Irving before?
No, like these names sound like
Kyrie Irving is a very talented professional basketball player.
Okay.
And Cole Beasley is a very talented professional football player. Both of whom are bizarrely very publicly anti-vax. And so they're making fun of these dumbasses who have no medical expertise, but have decided just that by fiat of their wealth and sports prowess, they decide what's best for their body and won't take the COVID vaccine. And the article is saying that recently there's been a breakthrough with a malaria vaccine, which is hugely important because malaria kills like 1 million people every year. Or I'm not sure what the real number is, but it's fucking gigantic. And there isn't really a cure or a vaccine for it. So the fact that we're having a groundbreak here or some kind of breakthrough in medical science, this could be a huge story. This could be like a Nobel Prize winning accomplishment. This could save millions of people's lives over the years. And it's like, but have we checked in with Dr. Irving and Dr. Beasley?
Right. Have we checked with
what Ashley has to say about science?
Ja Rule.
Have we checked with Nicki Minaj's cousin's balls yet?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the context.
God.
A good little bit of satire from Bro Bible.
Yeah, that's just like an Onion headline.
Yeah, it's good. It's quality stuff.
I mean, I do follow basketball to some extent, and I kind of like Kyrie Irving, despite this, not in a serious way, but in that, unlike some anti-vax athletes, like quarterbacks and stuff you heard from the NFL, like every time he talks about, he's questioned about why he won't take the vaccine, it becomes clearer and clearer that he doesn't know. Like he doesn't even understand his own thoughts enough, and that's like a beautiful mind kind of level of denial.
All right, Alex, here's another additional level of context for you. Okay. Remember a couple years ago when like flat Earth shit kind of bubbled up again?
I don't remember it ever not being present, but okay.
When B.O.B. was like, Earth flat, motherfuckers, that's why I retired from rapping. So Kyrie Irving flirted with flat Earth.
Is that why he fell off?
Well, so with the B.O.B. or the so Kyrie Irving, once again, clutch basketball player, but he thinks he's smarter than he is, and he's one of those like thinks he's a wordsmith, thinks he's like a philosophizer. It's like, no, you're a basketball player. It's not that you can't have thoughts that are political in nature.
You just don't.
But you just happen to not have.
You just don't in this instance. Yeah, you really don't.
So he's like, I'm standing up for the voiceless. Like, I'm upset that people are losing their jobs over this. Like, you're losing your job over this. So it's very funny.
And should. All right. There's nothing really to talk about because I mean the satire is the joke. It's a good joke. Now that I understand who these people are, it makes sense. I'd like to point out I have no problem with basketball or football. I just don't follow them myself, so I don't know anything. Like, if you follow, good for you. But yeah, these names sound like something I'd make up in Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it doesn't sound like a real person to me, so I'm really confused.
Keep Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard about the I heard about progress on that HIV vaccine through new mRNA technology. Do you know if it's the same thing with
No idea.
malaria? Okay.
All I know is that there is actually some hope. All I know is this: capitalism generally bad, modern world generally bad, but the one area where no matter how hard corporations try and ruin it, scientific breakthroughs on health have been going up steadily for 200 years. It's like it's the most impressive thing we've done as a human species. Our breakthroughs in life expectancy and overall health and catching diseases and coming up with cures is incredible, and will lead to untold progress for our race. But like, it's just so funny. But like, but what does my favorite athlete have to say about this?
I will.
Well,
And there's
nothing.
There's some people who live that way. Seriously, no, I'm sad.
I will say it's mostly the global south and sort of belt around the equator for whom a malaria vaccine would really matter. So fortunately, I don't think most people in India, sub-Saharan Africa, or like, South America really care that much about what these two people think.
No, but still. Hey, if there was a good functioning malaria vaccine, I would get it. Fuck it. It would make travel much easier, make drinking water in different parts of the world much easier. Like,
I mean, sure, I just don't think that's hitting
effective.
Northeast U.S. It's not really a problem that we.
Whatever, I might be adventuring.
Okay.
I want the whole cocktail. Yeah, but if this turns out to be like free and open source, Bill Gates is going to be
free
so
real
mad.
estate.
Bill Gates is going to sue whoever created it for not making it more of a ripoff.
Yeah.
When he's like salty, you never got.
How are the Africans going to learn self-responsibility if they don't have to pay for the malaria vaccine?
All right, I didn't introduce this to shit on Bill Gates.
I did. Fuck Bill Gates.
It's a bonus round.
Yeah,
the guy's a piece of garbage.
I'm saying it. No, but like really, one of the big problems with curing disease around the world is that you have people like Gates who pose as philanthropists while actually just doing bizarre bullshit and like self-aggrandizing and profiteering. And then when we're like, "Hey, you want this free vaccine?" They're like, "I don't know. Like Gates is supporting it, so that means we don't trust it because he's kind of tainted the water." So like recently they came up with this like bioengineered mosquito that when it breeds with other mosquitoes kills them.
Yes, I heard about
and
this.
That was going to wipe out several different subspecies, of which there's like thousands of species of mosquitoes. It was only going to take out a few of them. But the ones it was going to take out are the ones that spread malaria and the ones that spread some of the worst diseases.
And West Nile.
And we wanted to send it to countries in Africa, but the problem is Gates was backing it, so those countries are like, I don't know, man. Like it's got Gates backing it. He fucks with us all the time.
We also wanted to do it in America, and counties in Florida said no.
All I'm saying is, when you attach someone as toxic as Gates to a project, and he always manages to attach himself whether you like it or not.
Yeah, well, the problem is he got Epstein, so
everyone stopped trusting it.
So I don't think he's going to be attaching himself to much anymore. He got soft cancer, which I've been not happy about.
Yeah,
he'll be back.
I don't think he's going anywhere.
All right, let's move.
Just like hepatitis.
Yeah.
Let's move to someone else who's also insufferable. This from USA Today. Pete Buttigieg calls parenting twins. The sigh in your voice, I love it. Calls parenting twins the most demanding thing I have ever done. Also, new article from USA Today. We are really trying to push Pete Buttigieg as someone you should relate to and like and vote for president in the future. Please like this man. We have invested millions of dollars in his future.
They're so desperate to make Buttigieg a media darling. It's so pathetic, and he's so like. Okay, I was gonna say he's so unlikable. I think he is often unlikable, but he does have moments of eloquence and kind of the Obama style of of political clarity, which I think is appealing to a lot of people in certain demographics in the U.S. But yeah, like his complete absence of relevant experience in most political situations, especially transport. His complete flip-flopping, and I mean, he's kind of been surpassed, I suppose, now by cinema and being the most obviously corporate Democrat there is. But during his presidential election run, he was just like so so bluntly and obviously he wasn't even trying to hide it, because he was just acting like that was the right way to do things, and that just, it's so off-putting. And so it makes sense to me, I suppose, to conclude this rambling, that they have to fall back on the idea that, oh look, actually forget about what he actually believes and says. He's a family man, and he's an icon for the LGBTQ community. So let's focus on that, since everything else is bad and off-putting.
There's nothing better for the LGBTQ community than to obviously be a corporate/CIA prop to sabotage the left.
Allegedly.
No, that's confirmed. Like this motherfucker.
No, it's not.
The corporate part is confirmed.
Well, yeah, of course. Brett's right.
This motherfucker could not have been more obviously planted to fuck with the Sanders campaign, to fuck with who's the other, even to fuck with Warren, to fuck with anyone who had even remotely actually left-wing politics, by cutting their legs out from them, by being like, did you know that I also am gay?
For the audience's sake,
I like being left.
We are a 90% sure he's a CIA planned podcast.
The reality is, I mean, first of all, to briefly touch on his likability, I despise this motherfucker. I've never once seen a thing he did that I was like touched by. This is like the effort to be like a center-left populist for dipshits. Like he doesn't say anything original or creative. He literally engineers fake social moments where it's like, oh, the lights go out, we got to hold up our smartphones. It's like a bad Spielberg movie. He's constantly trying to reinvent himself in real time. It's like he forgot to cut the mic, so we can all tell that he's lying the entire time. He's just disgusting. And it's like someone who tries to use the fact of being a minority, or the fact of being a woman, or the fact of being gay, or the fact of whatever these things are, as like, therefore you can trust me, I'm one of you. Get fucked. Like, Harris is not better for black people because she's black, or better for women because she's a woman. She's horrible for these folks because she's the one who put them in fucking jail and kept them there. Not just like Obama did to people, just like Hillary was for women.
Just like Buttigieg did for his fucking town he was a mayor of.
Buttigieg was fucking awful for the town he was a mayor of. And that, like, look up anything about the place he was a mayor and the demos of what happened there, and basically how he basically just gave everything to corporations. And like, he doesn't actually speak to anything about his abilities or his knowledge or his talent. He's just always been the corporate stooge at every level. So for him to be like, let me continue to try to be relevant now, after the only brief moment of relevance I had, which was entirely engineered, has faded. I hope it fails as much as it deserves to fail, because I don't want to hear about this motherfucker ever again. He's not even fun as an enemy because he's so boring.
Don't worry, Alex. We're gonna only have to hear about him for another 20 years.
Yeah, I know. His kid's gonna grow up, and he's not gonna give him a good allowance. He's gonna be like, well, what do you say about the fact that you're doing allowance fixing? Like they're going to start accusing him of the same shit as the nerd.
They're going to be like Benjamin Applebaum?
Yeah. You're going to be like, but you admitted that you were part of allowance fixing. What do you have to say about this? And he's like, the lights went out.
That's fucking bullshit.
The lights went out. This is bullshit. I'm turning my smartphone on. It was like the one
time he sweared.
Yeah.
So good. Hey, for everyone's reference, go watch the 2020. Wait, was it 2020 or 2016? I can't remember.
2020.
Yeah, the 2020 election, when the New York Times gets all up their own ass about, like, we will interview every single one of the candidates and grill them and ask them questions, and then we will endorse all of them except the one actual progressive. Like, watch the video of the New York Times staff writers interviewing Buttigieg. And there's one journalist we're referencing, this guy Benjamin Applebaum, who's like he's like Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey in his robotic deconstruction of Pete Buttigieg's entire
he annihilates Pete
record
Buttigieg.
and career.
And Buttigieg is like clearly shitting bricks because he didn't think there was going to be even a single difficult question for him, and he's just like, no, I didn't do it. I just kind of did it. Fuck you. Like, that was his response. It was nothing. He had no defense. It was like, I didn't fix bread prices. The company I was working for did it, and I didn't know, even though I did it. I didn't know it. What?
All right, we all hate Pete Buttigieg.
Gibberish. Like he's basically just, what if Obama had no charisma or ability to hide the crimes? Well, then we'd all hate Obama, right? Like, the thing that makes Obama Obama is that he is likable and intelligent. Pete is neither. So he's just the same as that, but minus the only things that are redeemable.
All right. We are going to take a dive in Slate for what I like to call the jealous women section. We might change the title of that.
Yeah.
But these both from Slate. Help, my brother did everything the wrong way, and now he's thriving and a millionaire. And then also from Slate, I'm so tempted to dip into the money my kids inherited from their grandpa.
Oh, God.
Well, so I want to flip the script a little bit.
I've confirmed they're both women.
I want to ask you, Jason, why did you choose to include these?
Because Slate has this way with words, which is they get you to like hate the person who's posing the question in their advice columns in such a way that like I have to see what happened. I have to see how they're gonna get shut down. And so I don't know. There's something about the my brother did everything wrong that I found interesting, and I read this one a little bit, and it turns out the brother like dropped out of school and got into trading of stuff and got into crypto early, and just like they didn't go to school basically, and that the older sister who's writing is like, I'm $500,000 in debt because I tried to become a medical doctor, and it turns out being a medical doctor sucks, and so she's like mad at the choices she made. She's mad that her fail son brother succeeded, and she's like mad at America and her family and the systems at large that created this.
Well, she's basically right? Like the American economy rewards random assholes by fiat of like a lottery with shit like the stock market. So she's not wrong to say that like pursuing a medical career, which is a generally considered noble profession, should not leave you in horrific debt. Whereas some asshole who like bought Dogecoin at the right time is now a millionaire. Like, yeah, I mean that is idiotic.
Not like evil. He didn't do anything wrong.
No, the problem. Well, that's what I was going to get to. The problem is not the brother. The problem is the entire setup of the American economy. The problem is that the wrong things are rewarded and punished sort of randomly and in a way that's beyond your control. Yes. And there's no logical way to avoid that.
And she doesn't know where to point her anger.
Yeah.
So she just says like, well, he did it wrong. I did it right. This is not fair.
You could rewrite it as, hi, I did the thing that an upper middle class professional should be doing, and yet I am impoverished while my idiot brother is now a millionaire for no reason. Well, yeah.
Or you could just say, "Or my brother like bought a lotto ticket and won the lottery."
Yeah, it would be the same. It would be the same idea. Yeah.
Or maybe she's underselling her brother's work, and he actually like did some entrepreneurial work and didn't just randomly fall into it and like made his own little business. Like, who knows? The point is, I don't know. I just found these interesting because the other headline is addressing another issue of inequality that we often see, which is inheritance. And how should the governments deal with inheritance? And who should get inheritance? How should it be spent? And the idea that, like, they know that the right thing to do is to honor the grandma's wishes and let the money go to the kids. But she's, like, tempted by the dark side.
They're not going to invest in They're not going to invest in crypto. They're going to use it on some stupid shit like going to medical school.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that it's dip into, like, she's a corrupt... You know,
right, like for the slush fund, like
let me wet my beak.
Like the phrasings on these.
I couldn't even say like borrow or ask for or
dip into. Like, they may have.
I need to wet my beak in my children's fund. Like,
and not to grease the wheels.
I'm not going to steal it. I'm just going to siphon a little bit.
Yeah. I would like to purloin some of this money. It's so obviously
some of this filthy lucre.
Yeah. It's like she knows the answer. She's like describing herself as a monster.
Like, please remind me that my conscience is correct. Yeah. I'm curious about the first one about crypto and Dr. Sister. Like, well, I'm curious if she is a doctor, because like doctors still make good money. Like doctors aren't as widely underpaid as say teachers or something. They often make like multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars per year.
Well, what I had read is that she had finished and she's now into the getting a residency. And but her biggest objection was that she's being mistreated by people higher ups,
No shit.
and her family, like they're black, I think, and she's like, I get treated like like I'm a black woman, I get treated worse than all my white men colleagues, and it's not fair, and like life sucks, and working medical sucks, and like she's like resenting the field overall.
So she has less money, but is forced to live in the misery of corporate America, whereas her brother is richer.
Her brother's like balling.
I'm just glad the article wasn't. And my younger sister did her OnlyFans and is doing much better than me, so we don't have to rehash that again.
Why can't they be happy for their balling younger brother?
Because they're unhappy.
Look, if I fucking hit a crypto jackpot, I wouldn't like leave you hanging. Like,
well, presumably the brother did. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so pissy. He'd be, hey, throw me some of that Dogecoin. And she but she obviously is not getting any.
Dip into that Doge.
I'm so tempted to dip into my brother's Dogecoin. I don't know.
No, that's a Pornhub video, right?
Yeah, because that's what I was saying.
It's one of those like step
Doge. I'm stuck in a laundry bin.
They're stuck in the crypto market.
Yeah.
Crypto delivery for they got a pizza box.
I mean, on the one hand, like, yeah, so she's basically correct that the American economy's rigged and being middle class is a dead end at this point. On the other hand,
like a medical doctor.
These are both like relatively privileged people at this point. They're both either wealthy or on track to becoming wealthy. So like, yeah, it sucks, but like, whatever. Who cares? They're not really desperate.
But they're desperate enough to vent on the internet to Slate.
Like, look, would I want to be a medical doctor during the height of COVID and everyone's like throwing shit at nurses because they did their job? No, I wouldn't. Would I want to be a black woman in any American field during the height of like racist prejudice that this country has returned to openly? No. Sucks. But like, it's that or, some shitty job with the exact same problems. There's not that many jobs where you can escape racism and prejudice in America. Like, I guess, yeah, Dogecoin is a job because you don't have a boss. You just invested in a thing and now you have money. Like, sure. What she's really saying is, I wish I had also found a way to make a bunch of money without interacting with another human.
So, yeah. But yeah, even that, as you say, Alex, suggests some privilege on both sides, because to make big money in crypto, you need to have, a startup nest egg. And while that might be a loan, that also means being eligible for loans, which a lot of poor people aren't.
They both took out $500,000 loans, but his went to crypto and hers went to.
Here's a little more context.
Yeah.
She's also mad that he's a stoner. He's a classic stoner.
She's really making this guy more and more likable compared to herself.
And he started his entrepreneurial spirit by trading sneakers online when he was 12 and graduated to Bitcoin. Also, she's in her late 20s and he's in his mid 20s. This isn't some giant generational gap. This is just different choices made in the trajectory of their lives.
Wait. So he didn't like fail out of college and then scramble and somehow come out with the upper hand. He
dropped out at 16.
He was hustling from 12.
Smoking weed, hustling for 4 years.
He's just a Chappelle Show character. Like, this guy, he's a weed smoking young teenager.
He got to quit from Whack Arnold's.
Yeah, exactly. Like, go get him young blood, and he invested in sneakers. Right. Like, I don't know how the fuck this worked out for him, but it did.
It's a funny story. It's probably fake. So, speaking of people resenting each other for no reason, this from Yahoo News. Lazy crane operators making $250,000 a year, exacerbating port crisis, truckers say.
This one's a real
trucker and crane operator war.
A real complicated sentence.
They really crammed a lot.
So are they lazy? Is a lazy crane like a proper name? Like, welcome to the Lazy Crane Company? Like, or is it saying the crane operators are themselves lazy, therefore they shouldn't be making $250,000?
I do believe
it's saying they're lazy fat cats who, because of their insane degree of training, insurance, and difficulty of their job, make a lot of money.
Is there a work ethic they could have that would justify $250,000?
The truckers are mad that they're taking the flack for the shipping and port crises that are going on in the world, the global shipping problems. And it's like, it's the crane operators' fault. They're overpaid and they don't have to work as hard as us. They're not on the road as many hours. And the crane guy's like, bitch, if I drop this, I die. Okay,
take a digit off of the $250,000. Let's say they were making $25,000 a year and they were barely making enough to make ends meet. Would that justify them being lazy? Like, if you were really badly paid, you'd be like, hey, I'm only paid $25,000. I'm going to take my time.
You're getting in the weeds.
No, it's not getting in the weeds. What I'm saying to you is, they have made an irrational conjunction of ideas, which is that someone's being bad at their job is only justifiable when they're not well paid. Or is justifiable, rather, when they're not well paid. It's like these have nothing to do with each other. There's no job where it's like, well, if I'm not paid well enough, I'm going to be garbage, and that's fine.
But there's also no evidence that the crane operators are lazy. They're just projecting.
No,
the truckers are just mad.
No, I understand. It's just, once again, it's part of a broader narrative that almost everyone indulges in, including apparently lower class people against each other, which is your compensation is a function of your work ethic, is the argument.
Right.
And the reality is
billionaires deserve to be, because they must be princes. They
that is not true, and it has never been true. Some of the laziest people in the country are billionaires because they don't have to do work. That's why they're billionaires.
This has been drummed into people. Like, you're like a McDonald's worker. You deserve $8.25 an hour for the rest of your life because you're lazy. You're bad. You deserve minimum wage.
It's false manipulating those ideas.
Is the premise, Alex, that you're putting forth that salary or whatever income is not in reality related to work ethic and effort, or is it? I guess I think that's certainly true from what you're saying, but also are you saying the reverse as well, that the amount of effort you put into a job shouldn't be linked to the amount you're making from it?
I think it's a more complicated question. Like, should someone who's working harder be rewarded more? But the problem is, even if that was an option, it's a subjective measurement by people who have self-interested reasons to say who's working harder than who else.
Oh yeah, you can never trust. Yeah.
So there's no way to adjudicate that. There's no way to adjudicate that. It's like, okay, your boss tells you if you're the hardworking employee, right? Well, they'll just say the one who's hardest working is the one who kisses their ass the most, the one who does what they want them to do the most, not the one who's actually the most productive. Like, the most productive employees are almost never the ones who get promoted because they're doing what the company wants them to do in that role. The people who get promoted are the ones who follow orders well and kowtow nicely to the superiors, so that they can take care of the middle management bullshit while the superior gets blown or whatever. So like there's nothing to do. There's no relationship between like people getting promoted or people getting raises or people getting a meaningful increase in their quality of life based on like, oh, are they lazy or not? That's nonsense, and that's almost always nonsense.
Consider this story is not about your typical office environment. This is about physical, demanding, high training work. This is crane operators and truck drivers who also don't make a terrible living, by the way. And so the story should really be, isn't it sad that there is tremendous pressure on our ports and our shipping and our containing? There's massive strain on our trade system right now. It shouldn't be, let's all look for people to point fingers at and blame. It should be, let's reward these people, let's encourage them, let's help them work safely, let's maybe ease this burden on them, let's be a little bit more forgiving if your package doesn't show up a day early. Like, this is, as Alex says, like, this is a perfect opportunity for Pinkertons and rabble-rousers and people who want to bust up union talks to come in and turn the workers against each other. And the reason I chose this is because Yahoo, which is typically not a very political news group, will just take whatever they're given. And so they're given this insanely right-wing framed article, which is saying the problem is inherently the workers hating on each other and dividing instead of uniting around their similar training and purpose and shared experience.
One of the most common... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, it's evident in the way that these problems are, these supply chain problems are framed, or the name we have for them more specifically. We call them logistical problems. And last I checked, crane operators and truckers are not responsible for logistics.
They don't create the stuff. They don't plan all this stuff. They just do the physical job.
That was all I was going to say is, I completely agree. It's just a complete offloading of responsibility once again onto the individual and the laborer.
In one of the rare cases where it is unambiguously up to management to make sure that the logistical supply chain is working as it's supposed to.
Yeah.
If there's not enough crane operators, then you hire more fucking crane operators. If there's not enough truckers, then you hire more truckers. You don't say like, well, why aren't they accomplishing more than the physical limits of their body? Why aren't they shitting in bottles more? Like, no, come on.
It's because the craners are lazy.
Yeah. So to get into a little bit more of the detail of what Jason was talking about the right-wing frame, there's an entire genre of right-wing framing of these kinds of problems, which is, hey, all you exploited low-paid workers reading this, someone else who is less virtuous than you is making more money than you. Isn't that terrible? shouldn't we lower their quality of life so that you can feel satisfied via schadenfreude and resentment? Instead of the actually rational frame of the article, which is all of you are getting fucked and the value of your labor is being siphoned by the management who've artificially created these problems. Should you not collectively organize to force them to pay all of us better?
And this is true even for higher earners. This is true for the doctor we talked about in the Slate article. This is true for the crane operators here. And this is the kind of shit that Pete Buttigieg did when he worked at Kinsey.
Yeah.
Which is come up with that right-wing framing that Alex talked about. Decide who gets to get fired. Decide what parts of your corporation get to go on the chopping block and get moved to a different country with lower wage workers. That's the kind of shit that Pete Buttigieg got up to on his big illustrious resume. Find ways to divide laborers.
We talked about this on one of the recent episodes, but one of the most common tactics used by the right wing is to put into the sort of discussion a chief emphasis or focus on the virtue or ethics or morality or value of working class people, specifically as a function of their productivity or their work ethic or whatever. Now, in the abstract, there's nothing wrong with having a good work ethic, but when you base your entire value on that work ethic, you're basically doing several things on behalf of capital against yourself and your fellow man. One is to devalue the efforts and labor of anyone near you who isn't quite as good as a work ethic as you by making it seem like they should be able to do what you do, regardless of the fact that they might be disabled, old, less capable by dead to birth, who knows, less educated, who knows, right? Two, you're basically saying that the wages that you're getting should be tied to that as opposed to tied to what, for instance, is a necessary wage to sustain life or a necessary wage to, pay for rent or a necessary wage for whatever, or a wage that's commensurate with the value you've produced. So you're divorcing the value of your labor from your income and saying, no, the income should somehow be based on performance, which is a corporate metric used to determine how much wealth they can siphon, not how much value you're actually adding. So by focusing on the virtue of the individual worker, what you're essentially doing is doing corporate's job for them of dividing the workplace into individuals all competing with each other and not being able to organize for your collective bargaining, which would get all of you more money. Instead, you're going, well, which one individual of you can try to claim a little bit more money by dint of your hard work? No, it's a completely corporate frame, and it absolutely destroys the ability of labor to organize together because you're all at each other's throats, and you're at each other's throats because that's where they want you, because otherwise you'd be at their throats.
Now, I hear you, audience. You're probably saying, but Alex and Jason, you don't have jobs. How the fuck do you know?
Well, we do.
And, yeah, I know, but I just wanted to do a cell phone real quick. To them, I'd like to say, you know people who do this. If you work in an office, you know someone who's maybe pleasant and kind to work with and friendly, but who does corporate's job for them. They're constantly nagging. They're constantly saying, man, that other guy's underperforming. He really makes us look bad. Oh, he's really not holding up his end of the bargain. I have friends who do. I know friends who talk this way. They have so internalized the corporate logic that they essentially do the spying and the squealing, the tattling on their own workers who are underperforming. Like, this. You've all seen this. You've all witnessed this. Of workers who, in a panoptic sense, whip each other to carry more burden for the corporation than the other way around.
We are all collectively being starved so close to the brink of death that we realize that we can cannibalize each other for a brief repast, a brief respite from our ills. And so we begin to cannibalize each other because that is what's left to us when we can't organize collectively. Instead of organizing together and actually taking on and defeating the victimizer, instead we continue to victimize each other as a form of brief solution to our ills, which is just doing the work for them. It's just saying, hey, if I take down my fellow man, maybe I can get a brief amount of income or a brief amount of praise from my boss. I'll get a pat on the head for fucking over my fellow man. And this is the entire premise of being a scab. It's the entire premise of, tattling on each other in the workplace instead of actually having solidarity with each other. And even if you're like an egotistical sociopathic narcissist and you think that this is a legitimate and reasonable way to behave, you would still be serving your interests better by collectively organizing and all getting more money than you'd get even by being a piece of shit like that. So even if you have no ethics whatsoever, it still makes no sense to do it. You're still better off organizing together.
Right. Once again, we talk about it's often self-interested to be progressive.
Yeah.
It'll benefit you more if you benefit everyone. Unless you just love seeing other people suffer, there's really no argument for this.
And if that's the case, please stop listening. I don't want people like that listening to this show. If you're like a complete sadist and everything is just cruelty, I have no idea why the fuck you're here.
I just want to do a brief.
And would like to welcome the sadists.
Yeah, bring them back in. Yeah.
As someone who loves offices, who loves working in offices, they're so fun.
I mean, Aiden, you know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like you've seen this, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes it is accidental because when other people are not on the corporate wavelength, then it makes your job harder. And so there's like, on top of just trying to cannibalize, there's also just like, well, this is already miserable. Why should I excuse other people who make my life even more miserable by holding things up? But yes, I even that, like, you know, it makes things more complicated, but it still requires, like, yeah, talk to people, try to get on the same wavelengths, try to organize, don't hide your wages from each other. It's all about
stand up for each other, defend each other.
Yeah, it's all about camaraderie between workers, because in any setting, that is the key to making what is certainly going to be miserable, unless you are lucky enough to live in a truly good, truly egalitarian workplace, better, either incrementally or if you're lucky, you know, in a single moment of corporate revolution. But what I was going to say was, this is just like basically like a shower thought kind of level thing. But I think just hearing the term work ethic so often, I think just made me consider the fact that, like, even that is like so corrupting in modern context, modern linguistic context, to tie together work and ethic, as if the amount of time, the amount of energy you put into your employment is tied at all to morality in any sense. That idea should be completely divorced. Those ideas should be completely divorced from each other. But it's become like the defining thing, both in terms of your job and outside. Like, we also apply work ethic to other things, when we probably should be saying things like discipline, you know, personal motivation,
study habits.
Yeah, I think that, while, as I introduced it, self-effacingly, it is kind of like a shower thought. It's not that important. I do think that language has some importance, and probably the things that we normalize can affect the way that we internalize and view things on at least a subconscious level, if not an explicit one.
Because again, to your point, work ethic is only relevant to the people who are vulnerable and being exploited. We almost never ask about the work ethic of the CEO. We almost never ask about the work ethic of the people at the very top of any of these chains.
No, it's assumed.
It is given. Oh, they're rich, they must have a good work ethic, right? We never actually interrogate the work ethic of the people who are the actual exploiters, abusers, victimizers, siphoners of value in our society. The only people whose actual ethical qualities, as far as their work ethic or their performance or any of these related terms at work go, are the people who are vulnerable, are the people who could be fired at any moment, are the people who are living paycheck to paycheck. And the reason their ethic is being interrogated is because it's yet another form of coercion that the bosses use over them to make them terrified, so that they'll work for fewer benefits, lower wages, more hours, more brutality without quitting. Because that's all it's meant to do. It's meant to create a compliant, docile, pathetic workforce. That's what that term is used to do.
This is an interesting linguistic discussion, because, referencing back to sports, work ethic I actually don't often hear in the actual context of work. Work ethic often gets brought up in sports. And sports is a little bit of a different arena, where it's like, if you're first in, last to leave, always practicing, like, yeah, that's actually a commendable work ethic. But that's a field where there's ostensibly a little bit more meritocracy, and it's really based on pure talent. Like, there's no talent, if you're working a call center. Like, I mean, there's like personableness and getting along and just being efficient. But, Tom Brady's work ethic has nothing to do with the CEO of some business's work ethic, or the workers, that your typical laborer's work ethic. Those are very different uses of that term. And Aiden's certainly right that when we think of work ethic just out of context of like your actual job, it's, do I study? Do I eat right? Do I sleep right? Am I consistent? Am I making progress? Am I advancing? Am I working out? Am I doing everything I can to be the best me? But from a business perspective, it's, are the workers doing everything they can to make the most money for you?
And even within sports, maybe their work ethic of the average sports team member would be a little higher if the vast majority of the value of their labor wasn't being siphoned by some corrupt old billionaire white shithead. Maybe their work ethic would be a little better if, like, Bob Kraft didn't own 98% of the value they were generating. So it's just like, it's not surprising.
No, Alex, no.
Yeah.
Athletes actually make a disgustingly higher amount of their actual labor than most workers.
Well, it's still vastly less than they produce because they make an enormous amount of value.
Yeah, but here's a perfect example. The NFL actually has a union, and they actually make 50 cents on the dollar. That's insanely more than almost any other industry in the world.
I doubt it's that high, or else the people who are profiteering off of it wouldn't be as rich as they are.
It's 50 cents on the dollar. The NFL is actually fairly socialized. It's very interesting. We can hold a whole deep dive on it another day.
Considering that the NFL's average, the average NFL player's career is only like 3 years, and then their body's fucking wrecked, and you average out the money they made over the course of the rest of their life, it's not really that high compared to what you'd expect.
No, but the average NFL player who only plays for 3 years does not have a wrecked body after 3 years. They typically have a wrecked body after 10 plus, and by then they have actually made a decent amount of love and live a decent amount of money. Now, once again, I'm not saying they should be grateful for what they get, but what I'm saying is, in context, the NFL, because our society rewards it. We reward people who hit a ball with a stick. We reward people who throw and catch a ball. They actually get more for their labor than your average person. They really do. You have to win the genetic lottery. Once again, you have to deal with people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg judging your every single political decision. But for a brief period of time, you get a decent amount of the recompense for your labor.
Yeah, and I take a half step down the ladder to college sports, and suddenly you get a complete mirror image.
Well, you get college sports is way worse. Except for only this year with name and likeness stuff.
Not a mirror image, I should say. The opposite, the other side of the coin. Yeah, where you are. Yeah. The classic model.
The reason I reference the NFL, though, because the NFL is the biggest sport by far. And once again, I want to make this clear for people. Like, the NFL is to a degree socialized. They do revenue sharing. So the biggest teams don't just get to keep all their money. They actually divide that money to the smallest markets, like Green Bay and Cincinnati and Tennessee, who get like no viewership. They get the same salary cap. They get the same essentially financial support. They get the same marketing support. So, and like, there's way more parity that's designed into the system, and that's why it's a successful sport, because they've built in some degrees of socialized parity to let things not get too unequal. That's on purpose, and it's once again evidence of, even if you're a self-interested psycho, do socializing a little bit and you get better outcomes. Even the most viciously self-interested people should want to do this. All of Europe, who's still filled with as many greedy people as in America, they do these things because they know it's a better outcome. But we are so obsessed with the process, we don't even want better outcomes. We just want the process we like, which is why we're so committed to capitalism. All right, well, I did not expect that conversation to be generated from those articles.
Lots to say about labor.
Let's move to the this happens every couple cycles. Shitting on Bernie. Thanks, media. This from
like what sweater he's wearing this week.
This from Business Insider and the Daily Beast. So from the Business Insider, Bernie Sanders refuses to sign a statement condemning the protesters who harassed Kristen Sinema in the bathroom, report says.
It's Kirsten, actually.
And whatever, I don't give a shit. And this from the Daily Beast. Bernie's tax the rich bluff just got called by his fellow Dems.
It's so catty.
It's like literally, is J-Lo going to get back with Ben Affleck?
In order to call someone's bluff, you generally have to agree to do whatever the thing is to see if they would actually do it. Is that implying that the Democrats are actually willing to tax the rich now? Because if so, I guarantee you he'd be like, great, let's do it. I don't understand what that could possibly mean.
No, they certainly, Democrats agreed, and he's like, oh no, actually I don't want to do that.
Oh, secretly I've been a far-right psycho this whole time. I've just been posturing as left-wing for some reason, even though it's cost me my entire political career.
Alex, will you sign this thing to condemn the protesters at Kristen Sinema in the bathroom?
No, I'll sign a thing saying do it some more. I think that would give me a new job title, because then I'd be a cinema critic.
There you go. But this gave me PTSD flashbacks to the Elizabeth Warren "he told me a woman shouldn't run for president" bullshit thing. How did it feel when he called you a cunt? Like,
Kristen Sinema should not be allowed to take a shit until she passes an infrastructure bill. Like, if Amazon workers can't take a shit until they finish their deliveries, and lazy crane operators can, have to get their shit done, well, maybe she shouldn't be able to shit until the rest of America can. I don't give a crap what fucking time they're protesting or harassing her. She's not being harassed nearly enough for the violence that she's doing to the American people with her bullshit.
Yeah. She should be used to stress test Guantanamo, is how I feel.
Seriously.
These days. But, yeah, but Bernie Sanders, I saw this article as well. It's, completely right on this. And I thought, just quickly, I thought it was interesting that, and I do not think that Biden is in the right generally, as he seems to be drifting away from his flirtation with progressives towards returning to his corporate technocrat roots.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, right. But it was very funny. He was asked about this in the press conference. He's like, "Yeah, you just kind of have to deal with it, whatever."
With getting protested in a bathroom.
Yeah, he's like, "Yeah, if you're a politician, it just kind of comes with the job."
Just told her to nut up.
Yeah,
Bernie said that.
No, Biden.
Oh, okay.
Biden did.
That's great. See, I love his no.
Get fucked.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I can enjoy about Biden. He doesn't give a shit.
What I like about what I like about the Business Insider article is this is essentially the TMZ version of politics. It's like you run up on Kanye West after he took a shit, like, Kanye, what do you have to say about this last thing? Like, one, Bernie Sanders has no obligation to sign anything you put in front of him. He doesn't have to condemn anyone. He doesn't have to condemn shooters. He doesn't have to condemn terrorists. He doesn't have to condemn anything. His job description is not condemn bad things.
You know, the politicians, when they become politicians, they actually take on a role of having to sign random statements by concerned trolls. That's actually their job. If they don't do that, they're at fault. Just look at the random assholes with things like, sign this, you piece of shit! Sign it!
This is just as old a trick in the book that we were talking about with, like, Pinkertons busting up labor unions and getting workers to turn on each other. This is just as old a trick in the book. Oh, you haven't come out against the evil thing? You must be bad. Like, this is always used to shit on progressive leaders. This was used on fucking my boy, who's my favorite guy? Why am I blanking on his name right now? Eugene Debs. Like, Debs didn't come out against the communists. Like, like this is such an old way of being like, this progressive guy who has principles, turns out he doesn't.
Which this one's a fail because it's basically a funny and good thing.
I know.
Like, it's not even it's not like a heinous thing. It's like, okay, they harassed an asshole in a bathroom. Who cares?
But to Beltway psychos. Yeah. You're right. This is concerned trolling of the highest order. Right. The most important thing is when you go the sanctity of the bathroom in Congress. You can't dare be harassed by protesters there.
Yeah,
that's your safe space.
Yeah. God forbid Beltway psychos stop liking Bernie Sanders.
Right, he's lost the Beltway psycho.
I'm still waiting for the one article about what people do in bathrooms that comes out of the Beltway that doesn't make me want to kill everyone. That is not like, hey, are trans people really shitting in there, or is it just rape town? Can this woman please shit in peace while she destroys the country? Like, can I just get one article that's like a normal person tried to take a shit and someone stopped them because they're the piece of shit? I don't know. This is less than nothing. I've never wanted someone to be disrupted in the bathroom more than this headline, and that's the exact opposite of their intention. Like, right. So it's like, oh, someone planted a fucking flaming bag of dog shit on Joe Manchin's doorstep. Bernie won't condemn it. It's like, good. Good. Who cares?
And the cinema bathroom harassment, in all caps, is like would not need condemnation regardless of context. But the fact that she is absolutely refusing to engage with constituents and hold public meetings and public hearings of any kind, this is literally the only recourse available to her constituents. So even in just like the most practical appraising of the situation, it's understandable.
They're acting like she's Sumner having been beaten with a cane because someone shouted at her through a door.
For people's reference, senators and congressmen essentially have office hours. where their office is open for members of the public to schedule a meeting and come lobby them. You, member of the public, you can go lobby your senator.
Yeah.
You can schedule a meeting. You can walk down to Congress. You can pass a security checkpoint and go get like a 15-minute meeting with your senator. You're free to do so. You know what you're not allowed to do if you're that senator? Go to the bathroom to avoid it.
Where's the article? Mitch McConnell refuses to sign sentiment condemning Marjorie Taylor Greene for banging on AOC's door and threatening to kill her, or whatever the fuck that other thing was she was doing like 6 months ago. Like, the amount of times that this is done to actual progressives, this is done to like good Congress people, is more or less constant. Where's the fucking articles for them? Like, no one cares. This happens all the time. Being a congressman basically comes with the territory of psychopaths harassing you. In this case, it comes with the territory of public people reasonably harassing you too, if you're the psychopath.
But once again, it doesn't even matter that it's Kirsten Sinema. It only matters that it's her because right now she's fighting against the actual legislation.
Yeah.
Like, no one cares about Joe Manchin. He has literally never mattered. The only time he matters is when he's going to prevent Democrats from passing something.
Yeah.
They're just stopgaps. They're just road bumps. They're just speed bumps. That's what I meant. Like, they're just there to impede progress.
This article
and
only
people are going to be salty when you impede progress.
This article was only written so they could post yet another image of Bernie looking confused and angry.
Yeah,
they just wanted an excuse to post that, and they're like, what can we attach him to? How can we dig at Bernie some more? We have to meet our daily fuck Bernie Sanders quotient for ever daring to raise a hand against the neoliberal order. Well, what if we like tied him to this weird bathroom thing, maybe? I don't know. And someone's like, well, that makes no sense.
So you can just imagine the meeting of like,
fuck it, we'll do it live.
It's like a comedy writer's room. They're trying to come up with some kind of connection.
It's like someone died of a heart attack in DC. They're like, how can we get Sanders for this? Like, it's nothing to do with anything. It's just like, fuck it. Let's say that we tried to get him to sign a thing, and who can confirm whether we even did that or not?
How
can we get Sanders for the Norway bow and arrow attack?
Sanders caused the Everlong. Just write it. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
We have evidence that Sanders stabbed this British MP to death.
Yeah.
Sanders caused the USA. What's the big one that started that dumb war?
What, the Lucid?
Yeah.
Sanders caused the Hindenburg disaster. Like they're just like throwing shit at him. Like, hey, remember this guy who we don't like because he was a good guy? What if he was a moderately less good guy according to some insane?
Let's remind our insane audience that he's been the hero all along, and he's still the hero.
Bernie Sanders could take a dump in Kristen Sinema's tea, and I would still vote for him over her in any contest between the two of them. I don't care. Like, anyone who likes Bernie Sanders for the rational reasons that he was supporting the working class is not going to change their mind because he like made a faux pas of not adequately condemning some horseshit.
They didn't even make a faux pas. They're trying to force him to make a
fictional faux pas. Yeah. Well, I supported this man because he supported me. I supported this man because he supported the working class. Well, I don't know. This other horrible traitor woman who's destroying the working class, she didn't have enough time in the bathroom.
They're trying to gaslight him into thinking he made a faux pas.
I guess my politics have to change because of that. I guess I'm a conservative now because Kristen Sinema couldn't shit. What the fuck are they talking about?
They're grasping at straws.
Yeah, and it is kind of funny. I just read the headline one more time. That ends in report says, which kind of suggests that like they're not even sure
it could just be total bullshit.
They've added so many layers of this is bullshit that they can't ever be called on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, as we wind down, gang, I've got 3 what I think are funny articles. We'll see what everyone thinks.
Important to qualify.
I'm going to start with the least upsetting. But I don't know. I think there's something here. There's something we can massage out of this one. This from a very we don't often see this source from the Hollywood Reporter. Black Hollywood, which I don't know what the fuck that is snapping up paintings by this young artist.
I would not be surprised if Black Hollywood was like a rapper.
It's like some guy.
Yo, I'm Black Hollywood.
I think I know what they're getting at, which is like, the many parts of Hollywood who are black.
Of course.
Not bringing in some body, but like, what do you think about this? Because I have a couple thoughts on this.
Well, which artist did they say?
It sounds like
some young painter. It doesn't. Who the artist is doesn't really matter.
Okay, so it's a painter at least. We know that.
I'll leave it to your thoughts, I guess, because I just read this as like a culture piece. Like, hey, look at this up and coming person
Look,
who
it
is
says
somehow.
snapping up paintings. I didn't really have to go for much of a stretch to say a painter.
Well, yeah, but I
Yeah.
thought it might have been like Jay-Z's now painting or something. Like, I don't know. At this point, artist is such
This
a
young
generic
artist,
term.
Tracy.
Well, you see, now you buried the lead. You mentioned Jay-Z, who is obviously integral here.
I figured he would be, yeah, but it's like the you know, they're snapping up paintings by this young artist, George W. Bush. You know, it's like, who knows? Like, people can do paintings who are not primarily painters. Anyway.
Oh man.
So just what do you think about the concept here of like, because to me it reminds me of second wave feminism. It's like now black people are getting to do what typically rich white people do.
Right. There's enough
Buy
of
useless shit.
there's
for
enough of
cultural
a
value.
disposable income among a black bourgeoisie that they
Yeah.
can afford to do this. But to me, this is just an ad. It's just the artist got in touch with the paper and said, I need to sell even more of my paintings. Make it seem like everyone's doing that to start a hype train so people will buy my paintings. This literally to me is like the sidebar of a website. Have
Like
you heard of
last time.
Yeah, have you heard of the fact that everyone's buying, you know, this guy's paintings? Get on it quick! They're selling out any moment. There's only 4 in stock. That's what they sound like to me.
But so you mentioned Jay-Z, and now Jay-Z is one of the best examples of this, where, you know, he's a successful musician who makes lots of money by selling lots of albums, but then thinks he's some kind of like business mogul.
Yeah.
He thinks he's like more than just a very successful artist.
He's more than just the husband of a richer woman.
Now I buy property. Now I buy real estate. Now I buy art because it will appreciate in value instead of depreciate in value like a car. Like I'm some kind of pleb, young rich rapper who buys a Lambo, which is going to depreciate by 50% in 10 years. Yeah. When I buy this painting, which will appreciate. Like, to me, this is so like, you don't want to be a white bourgeoisie person. It sucks. They all have terrible taste. Stop trying to be like white rich people. White rich people are why everything sucks. And then he's like, gets into all weird conspiracy theories. He's writing like, you know what's more important? Credit. He starts like rapping about Jews owning banks. Like, there's all sorts of crazy shit that goes into.
Definitely nothing wrong with that.
Well,
nothing wrong with getting into wild anti-Semitic hysteria.
I do not want to get into the bizarre trend of anti-Semitism among the black community. I don't want to get into it this episode.
That's something that's something that highly educated and wealthy people should be engaged in.
We can pass on the intersection of religion and wealth and the black community. We can deal with that later. What do you think, Hayden? What do you think about this new young artist? What do you think about Black Hollywood?
Sounds like in itself the title of a pretty interesting movie.
I'd watch Black Hollywood.
Yeah, right.
Like all the coolest art actors.
Yeah, I understand the kind of the rolling out of threads of consideration of what this could be about you know, concerns and implications, especially around Jay-Z, who I mean, he is a business mogul, but it's pretty ridiculous how much of kind of how preachy he has become towards the younger generation of you know, what would have been his contemporaries if they were coming up alongside him.
Yeah, he's trying to be like Jordan Belfort. He's trying to be like a business, like a money manager. It's very weird. He just wants to be accepted. Like he wants to become an owner of the Nets. Like he wants to get in big business. And it didn't hurt that he married like the richest woman also, who was very successful.
Well, I guess it's different than his early business advice, which was sell drugs on the corner.
Right, sell crack.
Yeah, his business advice changed a little bit. Yeah.
Although, is it really better? I don't know.
No.
It's debatable.
I mean, for the young artist, which I mean, kind of a poor service to them to not even name them in the headline, but whatever. Sounds like they're doing okay. Good for them. Sounds like they've landed upon something that attracts a very affluent clientele, and you know, just like that millionaire brother who is now who cracked the code selling sneakers,
loan and Bitcoin,
and buying crypto. They found what the kind of pop art that attracts a bunch of really rich black celebrities. So good for them, unless they're a horrible person, then fuck up. But I'm never gonna read the article, so That's all I have to say.
Well, not putting the name in the headline is meant to make you read the article because now you're curious about who it is. Obviously,
I don't know.
They
It should be
have-
awful cynical. I think someone at the Hollywood Reporter was just desperate to find anything and found this like sitting there. And
it's not.
I
It's not cynical. This is like
cynical.
this is like media 101. Is you make headlines more compelling by leaving some critical thing out that you were then compelled to read the body to get.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I don't buy your insanely cynical take that like this is a planned article necessarily.
Well,
think
I'd
it's
only
just a
give that like an
desperation.
80% chance of being true. And there's obviously a chance that this is just they're desperate for like a public interest, human interest story, and they found something. But like, look at the way it's written. They didn't write Hollywood Reporter dash. Black Hollywood has grown increasingly fond of this artist. Here's the name. Because of their new style, what XYZ, right? They didn't just
Paintings are pretty good.
they didn't just give a sort of neutral biographical tagline. They gave an urgent buy now, click here to buy now headline of they're snapping them up. They're going to be gone in 60 seconds. Like this entire thing is an urgency based title. If you're not quick, you're not getting these paintings. That is the entire frame. So
I don't know.
that to me sells ads. Like that is selling the urgency with which you must yourself figure out about this guy and see if you want to buy his paintings quickly.
Maybe, but this isn't like an NFT scam. This is like they're not going to run out. Like you're not going to.
I'm just saying, press is literally the only thing that artists can do to get their name out there.
But the Hollywood Reporter is like a what do celebrities do thing. It's not really an ad thing. This is just look how cool celebrities are.
Yeah.
So I think it's just look, is it cool? Alicia Keys is buying like this guy's painting because it's got some like because it like it shows black people as art instead of like typical art. Like I don't know. To me, this is just trying to be like, oh, isn't our culture cool? This to me does not read like a marketing scam. But I don't know.
If I was trying to do that, I read an article called "Meet the 5 or 10 top new young black artists in LA who have created a scene." Like I would write an article that was more about the evolution and development of a community and the cultural advancements.
Yeah,
that they've
and
made.
I'm sure if your job was journalist at the Hollywood Reporter, you'd do a better job than this person.
But all I'm saying is the frame of that would be more general and more cultural and more promoting an entire group of people. This is literally one dude and the urgency with which you need to buy the things from one dude, which strikes me as an ad.
You're certainly right in that using the word snapping up does inject a little bit of urgency. All right, let's move to something completely different. This from CNN. Man falls to death after dangling from hot air balloon in Israel.
I mean, I've seen this episode of Assy McGee.
Like, why do you think I chose this? Because I'm not sure I even have a good answer.
I don't know. Was he struck by the Iron Dome?
Why did they include that he was dangling? Why wouldn't you just write "man falls to death after falling out of hot air balloon"?
There was a moment of suffering. Know that he was terrified.
They're trying to do a cliffhanger, but then they forgot to do a cliffhanger. Just like, oh, by the way, he died.
No, I think they're saying he was like showboating, and he was like, when.
I see what you're saying. He was doing Daredevil shit.
When Michael Jackson like held his baby out the window.
Yeah.
All right, I think I know why I picked this article.
Well, that was showboating, yeah.
Why? Because why is this news?
What if he wanted?
Why does it matter?
Okay, what if he wanted to kill himself without upsetting his family?
You had to get to heaven.
But
oh no, I'm falling.
What I'm saying is like, I was just showboating. What if this was clever?
Again with these tricking God articles.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is like a.
I agree though. Like, obviously, it's sad, loss of life. And I said that very brusquely, but I do mean that. But it's very weird that this made CNN.
Yeah, like this is a Mad Libs put together headline.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny and inscrutable.
Yeah, was he like? Were they trying to escape like the Gaza Strip or something? I don't.
So they hired an air balloon per day for like $1,000.
They'll never expect this.
This is the article with both the least death and the least hot air about Israel that I've read in a long time.
There you go.
It is keep on coming.
Email the show about what you think this article is about. All right, we're gonna
do not reply at bullshit.com.
Yeah. And
I don't know. Maybe we'll vote. Maybe we'll have an email at some point. And we will tell you in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And our final article of the day.
Honestly, it's probably below what you're listening to right now.
From Real Clear Politics.
Okay.
If polls are right, Dems are doomed. If they're wrong, it's worse.
What?
Exactly.
They haven't defined worse for who.
It's worse for Republicans if we're wrong.
Right, because that would just be a straightforward sentence, but it would be meaningless.
Yeah.
If polls are right, then the Democrats lose. If they're wrong, then the Republicans lose. And that would be bad. Like, what? Okay.
I don't think that's what it's mean.
Like, where's the country? Like, what are they talking about? Which polls? There's nothing. There's no content in this statement.
What do the polls mean?
All polls agree the Dems are fucked. Citation, my asshole. Like, what the fuck are they talking about? There's entire data aggregating websites that have polls that are very, very complicated. They're referencing nothing.
Are they trying to say that if Dems, come out with a majority, despite being complete hypocrites, liars, and completely ineffectual, then it's worse because people accept that reality and accept that treatment?
Yeah, this is written by Sanders. If the polls are right, then the Dems are doomed, which means the Republicans win. If they're worse, it's that the neoliberals will rule forever. It's a leftist article.
That's why he refused to sign that condemnation. He didn't have time. He had to write this article.
Yeah. I demand, I'm going to start a change.org, that Real Clear Politics change their name to Real Opaque Politics. Because this is inscrutable. Here, let me read to you.
False, obtuse politics.
Let me read to you one sentence from this article. The latest morning consult / political findings from last week showed Biden's approval underwater across the board. At 45% approval overall, 40% approval on the economy, 44% approval on healthcare, 40% on national security, 33% on immigration, 36% on foreign policy. What the fuck? Who is getting polled? What are you talking about? He's like, well, I liked what he did last week on foreign policy, but I hated what he did in healthcare. What the fuck are you talking about? No one knows any of this shit.
Because these are like 50-person push polls of Fox News viewers. Like these polls have almost no validity, and they almost never even pretend to do.
Jen Psaki couldn't answer what her approval is on each of these things. Like, no, the average American doesn't know fuck all about any of this stuff. We don't even know what the fuck is going on with any of these things.
I was going to guess.
Measure down to like, oh, he's 2 percentage points lower on the X policy than Y. Like, fuck out of here. This is bullshit.
I was definitely going to guess that it was about Biden's polls because that's the only poll information that anyone's ever been talking about for the last 6 months. But the problem is, first of all, he's probably not even going to run for re-election. And even if he did, things that are happening more than 3 years before that vote don't mean anything. Because no one remembers or cares what happened in the first year of someone's presidency. The only thing that matters is what's happening in like the 4 weeks at most before the actual election, should he run for re-election. At which point, the only thing that will matter is he alive? Because if his brain has fully imploded or if he has fully become deceased, then he will lose. And if not, and they run Trump against him, then he will win. And if not, and they run someone else against him, then he'll probably still win.
What if he dies and wins?
That would be perfect. As long as it's not Harris VP.
Okay, I think I solved the quadratic equation. What they're saying is if the polls are wrong in that they're underrepresenting how mad people are, the Dems are even more doomed.
Well, yeah, but that's meaningless. That's like saying the polls show bad things for him, but what if they were even worse that we can't prove?
Yeah, that's so stupid. I had never heard of Real Clear Politics.
Oh, really?
No. But I just want to present some information objectively, as we always do, without any opinion attached. It is formed by a former options trader and an advertising agency executive. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to add. Just take that as you will.
They're pretty much just a 538 competitor. And I've read this stuff for a while.
I love
but they're like a pro-Trump 538 competitor. Like they're asinine. Like, yeah, this is a dog shit website run by basically like business people for the sake of pushing a Trump Republican version of American politics, which is like I wouldn't even waste my time on them, to be honest with you. But they are. I mean, they're funny. Like they do push like the kind of dog shit you'd expect from an article like this. But it's like this is red meat for people who can't accept that Trump lost. This is red meat for people who are like, don't worry. The insurrection may have failed, but in 2024 he's coming back.
Those people don't read polls. Those people are on Stormfront. Those people
No,
are
of course
on,
they don't read polls.
Facebook anti-vax.
Of course they don't read polls, because if they read polls, they'd realize this is horseshit. They want someone else to say that they've read the polls and that it was good.
See, I don't think this is for anyone, because wonks would like turn their nose at this, and anyone like dumber than that would be like, "What is this bullshit?" Like, this is for no one. And the article, the headline, I don't know. The whole thing was just, I don't understand what's happening. I need to pass this on. I need to pass the buck. I need to pass this stone.
So let's briefly talk about polls, right? If you take poli-sci courses, like even a handful of them, what you quickly learn is that they don't mean anything, because polls can be engineered and are always engineered to achieve the outcomes that they get.
Right, there's no such thing as like a non-biased.
There's no neutral poll in a moving train. Like when you ask a poll question to an audience, let's even pretend that you find a perfectly representative audience, which also doesn't exist. You can very easily frame the question to get the result you want. And this is called push polling, which is to say you ask the question in a way that gets the outcome you're looking for. You can ask questions in a way that makes the vast majority of Americans support Medicare for all. You can ask the question in a way that makes the slim majority not support Medicare for all. And the right-wing papers publish that one, and the left-wing, centrist papers publish the former one, or would if any one of them still supported Medicare for all. The point is, polls do not really mean anything unless you actually trust the people conducting the poll and the media company telling you about the poll. Because not only are polls themselves incredibly easy to manipulate, but the media companies that republish, news stories on the polls selectively publish little tiny pieces of the poll data to get the result they want, even within the already curated results of a poll. So if you actually go to the source of almost any of the polls that are quoted in even major publications and look at the full data set that they produce, it's almost always wildly different outcomes than what is reported in those articles. So if someone says to you like, hey, polls show, it's like they're lying to you. Just stop right there. They're lying to you, because that's not how polls work. Polls always have a margin of error. Their sampling biases are often enormous. The pushing that they're doing towards one or another, whether they even realize it, is almost always the entire premise. There's no such thing as like this true mathematical knowledge that we have about what this means about the American public, which is why we have polls with like 30-point swings on the exact same question phrased slightly different. So if someone says to you like, oh, the polls show, no, they don't. They don't show a fucking thing.
Here's the funny thing about polling as the years have gone on. For a while, there actually were decent polls. Now, there have been institutions that did exactly what Alex said, which is they ask the same question multiple different ways and combine the results from their different skews to get an actual nice average. But as campaigns and politics has become increasingly, I wouldn't say tech focused, but like analytics focused. There has burgeoned a new industry for, as Alex says, polls that give you what you want. So whereas previously there are like these independent institutions which would do polling, now there's a cottage industry to go to Republicans and Democrats and get paid to give them polling that they want. So there's actually been a market incentive to give more biased polling over the last probably 20 years, I'd say, and that has only grown. And like all the young like millennials involved in politics these days are all these pollsters that have created these insane media companies that give you boutique polling that answers the exact thing you want.
But even more,
whereas before it was all run by like economists who just wanted the actual data.
Even more importantly than the fact that the polls are basically all manipulated, whether intentionally or not, to get the outcomes that they're looking for, it shouldn't even matter what the polling results are, no matter what they say, because your political project should not change based upon its current popularity. If you're, let's say you're an immigration rights advocate, and it's like, hey, a recent poll shows that 55% of Americans are okay with kids in cages. You wouldn't go like, all right, I guess we're putting kids in cages. You would go, how can I and my organizations and those representatives who work with me, or whoever the combination of your alliance is, fight to change the public narrative on what it means to have an ethical immigration policy. You wouldn't go like, well, there's a slim majority for something evil, time to kill myself. You would fight the thing. You would continue to fight the thing.
So it's useful to know how difficult that battle will be, in planning on how to fight that thing, and how to change perception, and how much of an uphill battle it will be.
Yeah, right, but again, that even implies that the polls tell you that in a meaningful way.
Yeah, which I agree they don't. Like the
They less and less do, but they used to.
The clearest example I remember is like reporting around the 2016 election, the presidential election, where of course Hillary was projected by winning in like a landslide victory by at least every liberal outlet.
Except even the best predictions then gave her like a 76% chance. 76%
until the last like week, she was at 90% on almost all of them, and she slid in the very end.
But the only thing that matters is the last week.
Which none of them mentioned to you when you're reading them into the previous 2 years.
And I just want to say one more thing, which is that the second point was, and then towards the very end, I remember the New York Times sent out finally reporters like to look at to travel to different states in the U.S. to talk to communities and voting blocks there, and they suddenly discovered, oh fuck, all these voiceless national polls that we've been basing all our data off are wrong. People do not feel this way now that we're talking to them face to face. And then it was too late, of course, to really change anything, or not anything could have been changed necessarily. But yeah, all the feedback shot back to central outlets, and things adjusted less than they should have, obviously, based on outcomes. But yeah, it's just like it's kind of the result that we see more and more in this analytics polling, just like what's the word, algorithm based kind of ecosystem that we're living in. It's like we think that we can boil people down based on a certain number of data points, but people are unpredictable, and we honestly are both informed by our own biases in designing those algorithms, and we still don't really understand how people think, because if we did, things might not be as bad as they are right now. Anyways,
from what historical data we have, I just want to use this as another example from American history. The majority of Americans throughout just before the Civil War did not support abolishing slavery as an immediate abolition, and the majority of Americans were even less likely to support that idea if it meant triggering a civil war or triggering a massive political conflict. If we had made our political decisions based upon the polling data available about an issue of clear ethical importance, we probably would have had slavery another 100 years or so. You cannot say, let us just throw some shit into the ether and be like, well, let's frame this question in a way that makes you very upset at the idea of what the consequences of something difficult would be if we attempted to do it. Like, did anyone want a bunch of people to die in a civil war? Obviously, they fucking didn't. But would it have been better to keep 100 times as many people in indentured servitude / slavery for the next 100 years? Probably not. And the question is not at any given moment, is the thing popular enough to have achieved the slim majority we need to say it has a democratic mandate? No, the question is, if you have a morally significant issue that has not yet reached majoritarian status of popular opinion, then you fucking fight until you get there. Like, look, in the 90s, gay marriage did not have the majority of people support it. It only had like low 20s support as far as the amount of people who thought that gay marriage should be a federal law, like that every state should be required to offer gay marriage. And now we're well above 50% throughout the whole country. That happened in the span of only 20 years, and it happened because the advocates for that cause fought tooth and nail to change public perceptions. And the overwhelming majority of the time that polls are cited in this way, they're meant to demotivate, demoralize, and demobilize activists, instead of saying, we have not yet reached what we need to be achieving as far as convincing enough people that the ethical thing is what we must fight for. We have more work to do. Let us keep doing that work. That's the only reason to reference the polls, as Aiden mentioned, like as a frame of reference for how well we're doing, not a frame of reference for like what is possible. But neoliberal presentations of polls, and they're the ones who love them the most, is always, here's what is possible, what the poll currently says is popular, as opposed to saying, this is a snapshot of the electorate, if to the degree that it's even accurate, how can we change what people think? That's the only question. Because what is ethical did not change because the majority of people don't do or don't support it. You know, slavery did not become more reasonable because most people were comfortable with it at the time. So it's to me, the entire framing of polls as a replacement for a political philosophy, for a political theory, for an ethical premise from which you fight, the reason you have a politics, that's nothing. That's nonsense. That's replacing ends and means. It's replacing content with functionality. You cannot say my political project is to win at something. If that's your political project, kill yourself. Like, no joke.
Win, no matter what.
If your political project is to always maintain a 51% popularity approval, no matter what evil you have to do to maintain it, you're a piece of shit and shouldn't be in politics.
Yeah, but Alex, you just spoiled the game. The Democrats and Republicans only exist to stay in power, not to actually pass policies that follow their moral code.
Yeah.
So the Democrats' in fact, the irony is the Democratic platform is just to have more than 50% popularity and win. Yeah. They don't have any belief.
And this is the fundamental problem. That is the fundamental problem, is they are career politicians seeking their own continued power and influence. They are not ideologues committed to good principles that they will fight for whether they're popular or not, which is the only reason to do politics at all that isn't evil. Anyway, I'm not a fan of polls.
All right,
politics are business. And
politics are bad. We did it, everyone.
And that's why we'll keep talking about them every week until we die.
Come back next time to hear us talk about how politics are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, are we going out on that article, Jason?
Yeah, that's all I got.
That was 20-something? I don't even remember.
Yeah, it was enough.
Okay. You've done enough damage.
You got to everything I wanted.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There were some other, like, what are they called? Like, My Little Pony's gone woke, but we don't need
Okay, yeah, you made a good decision. Oh, Christ. Well,
I don't know. I love the Washington Examiner. It's such good
material. This was a long and sort of dark one, but you know what? We didn't make you do the My Little Pony article.
I didn't think it was that dark. We went all across the spectrum.
We laughed, we cried, we raged.
I feel like I'm about to reach the stage of acceptance. So I think
we protested dumps.
Yeah.
We united workers across the world.
We did it.
Talked about big ripe ones.
Folks.
Well, we will see you next time with probably more of the same. See you later.
Love you. Bye.
Good night and good luck.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.